I'll now call to order this regular council meeting Monday, April 22nd, 2024 at 5 p.m. Firstly, we'd like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded ancestral territory of the Silks Okanagan peoples and the Splatsin of the Secwepemc Nation. Just a reminder to our audience that this meeting is being broadcast and recorded, and that's for our YouTube channel moving forward. I'd like to get, if I can, please, an adoption, thank you, Councillor Fowler. I will say the April 22nd, 2024, but we'll go with Councillor Fowler for mover and seconder. Councillor Drapla, thank you very much. And that the April 2nd, 2024 minutes of the City of Armstrong regular council meeting be adopted. A mover, Councillor Todd, seconder, Councillor Wayner. All those in favor? Thank you. Yes, of both. Yeah, I was going to get to that. I promise. I only forget things a few times, and then Janine kicks me. All right, we're going to start with the departmental updates report. And I guess since Don's not here, I can call the people. Sure. Philippa for corporate services, please.
Good evening, everyone. Short and sweet tonight. I have a quick update as of last Monday for our e-news, so our mass email notification system. We are up to over 100 subscribers, and that was prior to the open house. So we actually had quite a few people put down their email addresses to be included for that as well. So next meeting, I'll have those in for you in a new update. We also, in accordance with your strategic priorities, launched a new volunteer recognition, I'm not too sure what to call it, program. There we go. So we are looking for nominations of any volunteers, and once they start rolling in, we will obviously speak with them and get their permission, but we'd love to put up a little picture of them and just stating what they do and how they contribute to our community. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Philippa. That was short and sweet. Janine, I think you're gonna give us our financial report.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick update from finance. I've been busy sitting in this chair for a last little bit. The quarterly and semi-annual utility invoices were mailed out last week. The notice did include a really good newsletter from the communications department, which I hope everyone had a chance to read. And the due date for those is June the 6th. Warren, do you want to go next?
And up next is Warren Smith giving us our community service and emergency program update. He'll have more than a mouthful, I'm sure.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mine will probably be twice as long as the last two. So last week on the 27th, on the 17th and 18th, we hosted an emergency management program for EOC Essentials. So that's an opportunity for individuals from in and around the North Okanagan to come in and receive basic information and training on the operations of an EOC. So this is the first course that the Justice Institute provides. So it is an actual certification through the Justice Institute and is offered through the province through our provincial emergency management program. So it was great to see a large participation in that program. And we were able to put a staff member through that. And so we have one more trained staff, which is gaining further capacity. With emergency management, we've also sent out an expression of interest for EOC support. So that includes for both service providers and suppliers, as well as also for staffing, and that closes on May 27th. An update on the snowpack. So as of the 15th of April, our snowpack up at Silver Star Mountain is sitting at 83% of normal. So we're down just slightly from this past month. where we were sitting at 89%. So still not ideal, but we are far better off than what some other areas are that are sitting in 30%, 60%. But still, we are still under some pretty strong drought conditions. As we know it, we haven't seen rain or a substantial amount of rain for a while, so staff are still continuing to monitor that and really hoping that April showers bring May showers and June showers and flowers for Councillor Fowler. We just signed last month a cooling agreement with the Okanagan Regional Library. So that was something that we've had in works since last summer. But what this will allow us to do during an extreme heat event, we can partner with them and we will have a bit of a conversation and we can look at expanding opportunities for our community to have a cooling site to go to, which is the Okanagan Regional Library here in Armstrong. So it is an open, friendly, public place that people feel quite comfortable in going to. And we've had discussions with Emergency Management BC, and they are able to fund this type of resource for our community. So in the event that we do have an extreme heat event, we will initiate that conversation. They will look at the availability of staffing and their resources. If they're able to provide those resources, then we can move forward with extending their hours later into the evening to have a cooling spot for community members to go to. Digital speed display will be out in front of Memorial Park. We've got it scheduled for May 21st to 28th. So we've got that coming into town. That's the unit that we do share with 2 other communities. We will be further looking at trying to find placement of a pole for the other display unit that we have that is more of a permanent function for long term. But there are some concerns with liability and placement. Armstrong's unfortunately had a history of one going missing in the past, so we want to make sure that it's in a secure spot, but also that it can't be struck by a vehicle, because that is a fairly large area that has frequent changeover in parking, that people coming and going from the park. So we've got the one display board in, and we're looking for longer term support with the other display board. And we did last Friday, we participated in fire extinguisher training with all of our staff. I think we can say it was very successful. I think the staff feel a lot more confident in the operation of a fire extinguisher. I didn't get pictures to Philippa to show Janine in action, but we did have Martin, our training officer from the fire department, come out and provide training for us. So we did have an actual couple of live fires. So the staff got a good feel for how to use that piece of equipment should we ever have to do it, whether it's here within their workplace or even within their own personal life at home. That's it.
Warren, I don't see it in this report, but I think I read it, maybe it was in the past or another report, that the Upper Silver Star, is that the one that's got 80% of the normal snowpack? And then the lower lake had 25% in some document I was reading? Oh, okay, all right. So I was just gonna, I might as well ask him then, right? I was just wondering, so does the top lake overflow into the lower lake?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just curious, do we have an update on Hunter's Range on the snowpack up there? We've been provided those in the past. And
Hunter's Range, I can look that information up for you. I didn't include it. There wasn't much of a large variable for that site from what I recall off the top of my memory, but I can't get that number for you.
thank you. I guess you're off the hook. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Ackerman, if you don't mind, please, the Public Works update.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Quick update from Public Works. Street sweeping is finally underway. I'm sure folks saw the sweeper cruising around today. So they will be going full force. They were challenged with supply chain issues this year. They did have a couple breakdowns in a couple other communities, and parts took a little bit longer to arrive to get them back up and running. Part of the reason we parted ways with our sweeper, but they are here and they will work to bring a second machine in here shortly to get things back in action and get us cleaned up for spring. Line painting is scheduled to take place shortly thereafter. We're just coordinating with the contractor there, and they will come in and give everything a fresh coat of paint. A little bit later this season, which will help hopefully get us a little bit longer longevity out of the line painting. Surfaces have warmed up a little bit more and we'll get a little bit better adhesion and get that scheduled for the week of April 29th. And they're usually in about 4 or 5 days in the evenings and early mornings to get that completed. The landscape tender closed for City Hall on April 16th. Lots of plan takers. We did have things whittled down to 3 qualified submissions. We're just going through the review process right now with a team of our staff, and we'll look to evaluate those proposals and award here the week of April 29th. And contractors are able to start mid-May with completion before July 1st. Most are proposing to be done kind of mid-June, 3rd week of June. So we're excited to have that project underway and get the first phase of the landscaping completed. If you've been up by Lions Park, you noticed construction start to take place last week. Our crews went in and started preparing for the new playground installation at the park. Installation crews arrived this afternoon, and we'll spend the next 4 days installing the playground components, and then we'll look to reinstate the park and landscape. And we will work closely with the Lions Club on setting a date for a ribbon cutting ceremony up at the park with council and the Lions and the community. It's definitely generated a lot of interest in the neighborhood. Lots of kids are super excited about that addition. So look forward to bringing that online.
Just Brad, just before we move off on that one, I had sent you an email just regarding the fall zone material for that one. There was some concern I read online just about what type of fall zone materials. Do you want to just give a little bit of an update as to what the 4 types of fall zone materials are that are allowed and what we're using up there and how it differentiates, perhaps seeing some wood fiber that we might see in other playgrounds in the community?
Yep, I can provide some context to that. So the engineered wood fiber is what is called for the Lions Park playground, and that's a specifically designed wood fiber to limit splinters, wood chips, goes through a rigorous process to be in production. Other options are obviously the pea gravel and recycled rubber surfacing. The engineered wood fiber does meet the accessibility requirements and the fall requirements for this type of a playground. It is a suitable product. We've requested the product spec sheets and the supplier information from the contractor review before it's installed, but we're confident that that will meet the safety requirements for the Canadian playground standard and provides for a safe, clean surface that we're able to maintain and the public's able to enjoy.
Thanks, Brad. The other approved fall zone material is washed sand.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
both pea gravel and sand have accessibility issues. So it's harder for kids who might have mobility issues to roll up and on those. That's why the wood fiber is preferred. But from my understanding, the wood fiber that we're using or the engineered wood chips, they go through a special augering process to remove the splinters round the edges and make it so that's much safer for the kids to play or fall in. And if they happen to fall on the ground, they don't get hurt. So that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that is correct. And the wash sand and the pea gravel, they do not provide that same level of accessibility like Councillor Nietzsche has mentioned, but they also have some of their maintenance challenges as well with them. So we will work with that playground supplier to ensure that we have a product that the community's proud of. Crew's been working on dealing with some of our Category 4 and Category 5 sanitary defects. We've knocked 3 of those off in early March, and we continue to line up a contractor to whittle away at that list. The ones that we've undertaken so far have been fairly complex in people's backyards within right-of-ways and We've been fairly intrusive to go in and dig up manholes and replace sections of pipe. But the contractor's done a fabulous job. The residents have been super understanding, and it's been educational for a lot of them. They didn't recognize they had that infrastructure in their backyard. So that program has been moving along quite nicely. Staff have been working on water valve exercising, just making sure that we can get our water key on all of our valves, and those valves do operate. So in the event of a line break or needing to isolate sections of pipe, we know that those valves function. The ones that have issues, we're going in and addressing those right now. So we have that level of certainty that when we need to isolate something in a break, we can do it quickly and efficiently. The other one that is currently going on is you'll see our flusher truck out. We're targeting some of those areas where we know we have large root infestations into the sanitary lines. That was identified in the CCTV camera work we did last year. So crews are now going in and removing that root mass, cameraing before, removing the roots and cameraing after, so we can document that those issues have been addressed. If we have any liability claims that come through, we have documentation to show that the condition of the pipes are functioning. Crews were up at Silver Star Lakes on April 12th. They noted the North Lake is sitting at 90% capacity and the South Lake is sitting about roughly 25% capacity. Snow depth up at our measuring location is currently sitting at 36 inches, slightly below normal, but there was still enough snow. The guys got stuck while they were up there as well. So that's always our gauge on how much snow is still left up there. So we're sitting in a good position so far. Continue to watch our flows coming down Fortune Creek. Right now, we do have a very good flow. We're overtopping our intake, and the nice thing is, up to date, this slower melt is not getting us into that usual turbidity problem that we have. So that can change with some significant rain, but right now it looks like we might be able to get through this freshet without having to look at going on water restrictions if we have to go on to our wells. So we'll see how we progress through that, but we're happy with how things are progressing so far. The reservoir at Thomas Hayes is sitting at 64% capacity. We're looking at charging the lines up, and we'll be providing spray irrigation to our farmers here starting on May the 6th, and we'll run that season. We'll start our soil sampling, water sampling, and get them up and running for that. So it's a quick overview of where things are at in operations.
Thanks, Brad. So there's been some citizens that have been concerned that they haven't seen our street sweepers out. And my response to a couple that actually called me, and I don't answer too much on Facebook, but the ones who actually reached out to me, I explained that yes, we did get rid of the albatross that we had as a street sweeper, and for good reason. And that we can contract out for not a lot of difference in cost that the street sweeper was costing us for maintenance. But for those people that are watching on YouTube, I also explained that when we did start the street sweeping, that it would be done in no time flat because we'd have 1 or 2 street sweepers in town. Whereas before it could be July, and then we were just working in between maintenance problems. So could you just kind of give just a basic overrun of how long it'll take to do the street sweeping now that we have a contractor as opposed to how it used to be?
Yep, great opportunity to do it. So yeah, the street sweepers are very labor intensive for repairs and maintenance. So we did have to spend a good chunk of money on ours. So we opted to look to a contract delivery model. So we have that set up for 4 complete sweepings of the community throughout the year. 1 at the end of March, 1 early June, 1 in August, and 1 in October. And that'll be a wall-to-wall sweep of the city. Our contractor has the ability to come in with a regenerative air sweeper, which is similar to our previous sweeper, as well as mechanical sweepers to pick up that debris, and they can cover our community in a relatively short amount of time. So overall, our service level will go up quite a bit from what we were providing previously with our 1 sweeper, and they do it at a very cost-effective means. Because they specialize in that and they can hit it hard. And we have the benefit of having a fixed cost for our annual sweep program, which comes in substantially cheaper than what we were spending for our annual sweeping program.
One other thing I noticed when I saw the street sweeper today was that it was kind of a fun fact to see the street sweeper sweeping without the big ball of dust that used to accompany ours. So it's also a lot more environmentally friendly. I would like to add that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Kramer. Just a quick question on the valve exercises. Now, this isn't for water, but it's for the diversion valve that we installed for flooding.
Yes.
What do we call that?
The Megan Creek diversion.
Okay, so do we have a regular basis that we make sure that that thing works?
Yep, that's part of our ongoing program for all of our valves, is ensuring that they do function as designed. They do
Yeah.
require maintenance, and we go through an advance of freshet, make sure we have the ability to open and follow the protocols.
So prior to us needing it, we do check to make sure that it works.
100%.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Brad, just going back to the street sweeping, the contract that we have with the street sweeping contractor is a 3-year agreement with an option to extend, or how long is that contract for?
It is a 3-year agreement with 2 1-year extensions.
We have an extension.
Yeah.
And so, although there was a slight delay in getting started this year, just because we were going through the procurement process and ended up awarding the contract, so slight delay, but next year we fully anticipate that should the conditions be ready, they would start end of March, early April kind of thing. Is that what the general timeline is?
Yeah, through our procurement process, we did specify the weeks that we wanted the sweeping to take place. So that ensures that we get in that queue for the following year to have sweeping taking place between this date and this date, and we don't get bumped around. So we have that certainty.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that.
Excellent.
And up next, Miss Cordell. Don't feel bad. I have lots of questions for you tonight. I'm not going to be picking on you, but I'm just telling you in advance.
Thank you, Your Worship, for all that warning. So my update is fairly small today because we were in the middle of a whole bunch of open houses when I wrote it. So other than the work we were doing in planning, we received notification that we did receive a grant from BC Hydro for $7,500 to support the purchasing of plant materials for the City Hall landscaping. So that helps us stretch our City Hall landscaping budget a little bit farther, which is great. Additionally, we did receive funding from UBCM for the Complete Communities Grant. So this funding will be used to do a bit of a analysis of our community, of the building age, building type, building styles, to be able to do some modeling of what infill could look like so that we can use this to support us in our conversations about new density with the province. It will feed into our OCP. The Complete Communities Grant has to be separate from our OCP, but this data will help us double check the land use designation mapping to see if the areas that are flagged for redevelopment make sense. And it'll just give us a little more data and a little more background, as well as generating some visuals of what redevelopment of an area could look like if it was done the way we're imagining it. So that's $105,000 we were notified last week, which is pretty exciting. And then just on the down note, because can't have all good news. Unfortunately, we were notified that we were not successful with the Canada Mortgage and Housing actually the Housing Accelerator Fund. It wasn't Rapid Accelerator Fund, which is unfortunate. They've just indicated they were oversubscribed in their funding. And I would assume we're not maybe as high in the housing priority list as some other communities.
Just backing up one to the communities, the Complete Communities Fund, sorry. This will tie in with our OCP, sort of you stated. It's going to do a deeper dive. And so the completion time still would have to correspond prior to accepting the OCP and moving it forward?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, for that question. I did meet with Urban Systems today who filled out the application for us. So we're doing a notice of intent right now to see if we can hire Urban Systems. It's a process whereby we tell the community it makes the most sense to hire Urban Systems, so we're looking at doing that. If anybody puts in a complaint, then we'll have to go through a full procurement process. But as it stands now, if the notice of intent goes forward, we'll be able to award it May 3rd probably and get started right away. They won't have the full complete communities report completed before the OCP is done, but they will have the data analysis done in adequate time to feed into the OCP. So you'll likely still see a draft OCP in advance of that, but they're doing a whole bunch of these all over the province and they've got it pretty smooth. They've got their spatial analysis team ready to go as soon as we give them the nod. And they have indicated to me there will be plenty of time to do this and still have the OCP done in the timeframes we've anticipated.
I'm very grateful that we got this grant and we're moving it forward and the timing seems to be good. I just want to make sure that we're getting the information that we want and it's being applied the way it needs to be. I know that there was a lot of backlash about many things in the presentation with the OCP. And I think, we spent a lot of good money on that and it didn't sit well with the public. And now we're throwing more money and granted it's from a different grant. I just want to ensure that we tie those together properly and we do them so that we're not throwing grant money away that could be used by another community or in a different function.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, do we have any, I guess, idea what Urban Systems uses for that modeling process? And I'm also curious, the data we have, I'm going to guess, integrates probably well into their systems they have now. So what we've used so far for our OSOP probably blends into those systems rather well because it's probably organized in a fashion that does that. I'm just curious if we have any idea if we know what that modeling process is.
So they call it, it's on the screen there. They call it City Engine. It's I think a proprietary program that they've developed. I don't have a lot of details on it yet, but they have our data that they have for the OCP, our modeling and all the growth scenarios. And then I think that they'll integrate the BC assessment information about the age of our housing stock and what we have, and then mix those two together. That's a very untechnical description of what they'll do, but that's my understanding is that they'll use all of those pieces to come up with some information that we'll use in our OCP.
Perfect. I think I was just curious, maybe if it used AI or if it used any of those pieces, but we'll wait and see who comes to the table and what they bring. And I'm curious and excited about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just expanding a little bit on perhaps what his worship was getting to. Lori, is that I'm just wondering if because we've gone through the extensive public engagement process with the OCP, is that perhaps we want to give us some time now to develop an accurate scope for this grant funding based on the feedback that we've heard from the community and from the public engagement, so that we're not having them do modeling over something that perhaps council isn't going to be supporting in terms of changes to the OCP. And so maybe we want to make sure that we put all the ducks in a row first before we go and develop the scope of work for Urban Systems to do complete cities. Where I know I'm getting at, perhaps we might want to make sure there's a step in between there where council's had an opportunity then to provide some feedback from what we've heard from the community, whatever else, and then we're developing and targeting this work to be done accurately based on what the OCP is most likely to look like.
So I think, sorry, through your worship, to answer that question, we have a fairly well-developed scope of work that was used in the grant application that I'm happy to bring forward to council at an upcoming meeting so you can see the full scope of it. It's primarily looking at where we are today, not so much as applying those kind of future lenses. So it's doing analysis on what we have, and then we'll use that to help tweak our land use designation maps based on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's very similar to the question Councillor Nitchie was asking, as When they're doing the analysis, are they focusing just on the whole, the entire community and then feeding that back into our designations? Or are they focusing their analysis on areas that we have as future designations or our current zoning for higher density designations?
So what they're gonna be focusing on is the whole community as it exists now, not based on
Any zoning?
policy, yeah,
Okay.
but based on reality on the ground.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then I guess a follow-up question that's not really related to that, but kind of is, do we have any workshop opportunities as council to kind of look at both Carrie and OCP, just to have a brainstorm session about what we've heard from members of the community, and then kind of to go with next steps, right? I think we've heard a lot of feedback, and I don't know, I just like a chance to sit down as a group and kind of digest some of that in conversation.
I agree with yourself, Councilor Fowler, and Councilor Nietzsche. Thank you for once again putting it so well. I think we should take this up with Ms. Lowe when she returns from vacation. I don't think it's fair to put it on staff at this time. So we'll bring it up again.
Perfect, thank you.
The next item's mine as well, so I figure I'll just stay. Yeah.
All right, presentation reports. We have a developed variance permit, and I will let you run that by us, Ms. Cordell. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Are you gonna take control? Okay, so this is just a reminder that a development variance permit cannot vary the use or density of land as outlined in the zoning bylaw. It can only look at the setbacks or the parking requirements. This application doesn't deal with those, but it's just, I like to have it on there as a good reminder. Next slide, please. So this is an application at an existing automotive shop to add one additional service bay. It's a much smaller service bay than the front service bays. I'll show you a drawing of that in a minute. It's an application to vary the requirements for parking from 10 to 7 stalls. That should be, not to 1. My apologies. That's a typo only in the PowerPoint, not in your report. And to vary the rear yard setback from 6 meters to 0.5 meter, and the side yard setbacks from 1.5 meter to 0 meters. Next slide, please. As you can see, and just a reminder that the aerial photograph is offset a little bit, so the building isn't halfway through the property line there. But that property currently has a 0 lot line on the one side. So this would be an extension of that 0 lot line. You can see in red the addition that they're proposing. It's quite a lot smaller than the other service bays, so it would be a small additional service bay. And then they're demonstrating parking where they see it. I have indicated, and it's under my picture, but they've indicated two stalls up front. The way that the concrete is, there's only really space for 1 stall. I noticed they had 2 motorbikes parked in there, so that is maybe possible, but it doesn't meet the bylaw for 2 stalls. So through the review of the application, we actually added the request for the parking variance because they had thought they had met the parking bylaw, but the lots aren't quite the right size. And when they initially put in their application or their building, the bylaw had different requirements. So a requirement for the additional bay is 2 additional parking stalls. Next slide, please. We did we did a referral response. They're outlined in detail in your report. The only one that really had any kind of significant response was BC Hydro, and it was just related to a right-of-way that I will just pass on to the landowner. It doesn't prohibit what they're doing. It's just something for them to be aware of. Otherwise, there were no substantive concerns noted, and no responses from adjacent property owners. So this is a bit of a tricky one to manage. So this parcel is zoned C2, and that's because the C2 zone allows for automotive uses. So in the previous zoning bylaw, it had been zoned C1 and it had been added as a specific use for that parcel. And when the zoning bylaw was updated previously, they then switched it to C2, which changes all the setback requirements from what it had previously, which makes it a little bit non-conforming with our current zoning bylaw and makes it a little bit tricky to navigate some of these things moving forward. Because that zone is primarily along the highway where the parcels are bigger and they have more room to provide off-site parking and bigger setbacks. The parcels surrounding this parcel are C1, which is to the, if you're looking at that map from here to the left, like PV Coffee and the house beside it are both zoned C1. Shepherd's is zoned I1, which is our industrial zoning. And then across the street, the houses are residential. The C1 parcel beside it is allowed to have a 0 lot line coverage because that's a commercial zone. So allowing this one to go that close to the parcel lines will be consistent with the two properties kind of most adjacent to that development. If council should approve this variance permit, they will still require a development permit to approve the look and feel and a building permit. You could see from the previous map that the parcel is smaller than the adjacent parcels. And that is because when the automotive shop was developed, we took extra road allowance for the lane and extra road allowance for wood. The lane was primarily because of the hydro concerns in the back. I think that's what triggered it from my review of the file. But the front is road allowance for expanding wood. So that also means that even if they go really close to that lot line, it's still set back farther than the other properties in the lane, which are deeper than it is. So in terms of discussion, this is a fairly small application. Parking is constrained on that site, and there's not a lot of street parking around it because of its location. Wood doesn't have a lot of parking. They do have spots in the boulevard where they gave that extra boulevard. The setbacks, they'll bring the building close to the already restricted lane, but of course not as close as the other properties. It's not really expected to impact the lane significantly. The site coverage really is minor. It's going from 50 to 52%. They've already basically covered the whole site in pavement. This won't change the water infiltration on the site as it is. And the parcels in the C1 zone are allowed 100% coverage. So that's likely why they covered their whole site, because they were C1 at the time they developed. Okay, next slide, Philippa. So my recommendation to you today is that development variance permit application 2402 DVP to vary the following setbacks of zoning bylaw 1770/2015. Parking requirements from 10 off street to 7. Rear yards from 6 to 5, side yard from 1.5 to 0, and lot coverage from 50 to 52% for the property at 2505 Wood Avenue, at that legal description be issued.
Thank you. Ms. Cordell, do we have a mover? Councilor Nietzsche, seconder. Thank you, Councilor Dropala. And any questions? Councilor Weiner.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking at this, that even just the nature of the business, it's an automotive industry. The community, it's a key component for the economy of Armstrong, in my opinion. It's everyone uses the auto shop at somewhere in Armstrong to service their vehicles to get to work, to and from work, and they also use it for their businesses. So to see this grow it's a huge asset for Armstrong. The fact that it's needed, it serves a great need. The challenge that I'm having is the parking. So I've looked at the space extensively. I didn't have a lot of issue with just the extra growth, the extra bay, but where I was looking at it, to me, I was looking at 4 bays. Typically you have 4 staff. Do we have any idea how many staff work in the shop?
So the challenge here is we cannot hold them to the zoning bylaw standards today.
Yeah.
So what I did was I went back and pulled the parking requirement at the time of development. Which was 8 stalls.
Okay.
So then with the addition of the bay, then it would be another 2 stalls required. So it's not based on staff in the zoning bylaw, it's just based on those uses.
Okay, fair enough. If I was to base it on those uses and based on my just understanding, I guess I can ask this question: is there a legal suite above the unit that would
Yeah,
impact
and
it
that was included at the time.
in the zoning?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my feeling is based on what I'm seeing and how much parking is there, I would want to see the outcome of the parking allocation for the Kerry project before I'd feel comfortable allocating the zoning. So my preference would be to table this until that outcome.
Though that will move forward. Any other question, Councillor Drapla?
Yeah, I appreciate your concerns, Councillor Wayner. I think when I looked at this project, I'm in favor of the variances, specifically the parking, because of the smaller lot size. And I know that that's not going to be potentially not permanent into the future, but I think it's looking far enough out that I feel comfortable having a variance of a couple spots with the amount of extra space they have in the boulevard on Wood.
Thank you, Councillor Drapla. Councillor Todd.
I agree with Councillor Drapla. I understand the concerns our fellow councillor has, but at this point, I think I'd be quite in favor of the moving ahead with this.
Councillor Fowler.
Thank you. I'd love to see this go ahead as well, but I also appreciate Councillor Wayner's concerns. When we look at another automotive business in town that is taking a lot of street parking up, I would think that, if we continue to go ahead with giving variances on parking, we should also be concerned with making sure that bylaw has people staying within the rules and regulations of street parking, length of time, whatever we need to do. It's getting tighter and tighter all the time, as we all know. People weren't crazy about losing parking in the downtown revitalization because they want to keep those parking spots for their customers, not for people to park all day long that are working there. So I'm still really thinking about this. I want to see this go ahead, but I'm still wrapping my head around it because we got beat up pretty good about parking and we haven't even done anything about it. It was just asking the question about it. So I'll let somebody else talk for a few minutes.
Councillor Valster.
Thank you, Mayor Kramer. I went down and took a peek at it. I think a couple other people also did too. I asked Dennis to kind of walk me through what he was wanting to do there. My opinion of it is it's good for his business. The decrease in parking directly affects his business. There isn't people if him reducing his own parking is only affecting his business. It's not affecting Shepherd's, it's not affecting PV Boulevard Coffee, and it's residential right beside it. So in reducing his parking, it's him making his own decision for his own business. And the way that I see it is if he's comfortable with stepping down the parking size, because he's got the 2 stalls out front plus the 7 that are outlined in this. If he's comfortable with that, then I feel like I'm comfortable with it as well.
Councillor Nietzsche.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I too I'm supportive of the variance request and no issues moving forward with it. I totally respect though what Councillor Wayner is getting to in that, we certainly heard loud and clear that there are parking challenges downtown. I'm just thinking on a higher level, perhaps this triggers some thought that staff and council can consider, which is similar to the cash in lieu of parkland dedication philosophy, is that we have cash in lieu of parking requirements, so that in the future, when we are receiving these type of requests to vary parking, particularly in the downtown area where it's not sometimes even practical or feasible to even build parking on some of those on-site properties, that we come up with a formula whereby, you know, there's a cash granted to the city for these type of variances, and then that is placed in reserve for future parking development and parking land acquisition. So something that we could consider, perhaps something for discussion in the future. But in terms of this request, I have no issue with advancing.
Ms. Cordell?
Your worship, may I address that? So I appreciate you bringing that up because our zoning bylaw does have an allocation for a cash in lieu policy for parking. However, as a community, we do not have a charge for it at this time. And I believe it came before council before and was defeated. It is definitely on the list of things, of tools in our pocket to help address downtown parking. And and I really appreciate you bringing it up because I also am going to raise it as we move forward, looking at a parking strategy for downtown. So just thank you for seeding the idea, and I will bring something back on that shortly.
Councillor Todd?
If we just look at this as not losing a parking space and just creating one covered parking space, that's the way I'm sort of looking at it. We're not losing anything, just putting a building over a space that's there. So that's my opinion.
Councillor Weiner?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just two things to think about as far as the building goes. The building is going to be around for a very, very long time, and the current owner may or may not own it its entire lifetime. And how it's used, it could impact the businesses around it by simply adding those vehicles to park in front of those other businesses. So there very, very well could be an impact to those businesses, especially when I walk by today, seeing how many vehicles are parked outside of the bay. So that customers could pick up those vehicles. And typically in that automotive industry, you're not necessarily going to just have one in the bay. You're also going to have one to service because you're going to service potentially, especially at tire time, more than one vehicle. So it's, again, I don't want to speak to the specifics of it, but I do feel that the concern is valid, and I don't feel comfortable quite yet supporting it at this time.
Councillor Valsar, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to what Councillor Todd was saying about it being a covered parking stall. When I talked with Dennis, he was telling me that the new stall there is intended for long-term maintenance, so that they can do an engine repair and they can take it all apart and leave it out and not have people tripping over it and that kind of stuff. I definitely appreciate the fact that Councillor Weiner says that the owner could sell it next year and there would be nothing that we could do to change that. And that business could also change, and the building is permanent. So I definitely take what you say seriously.
I've given it a little bit more thought here, and I think the deciding factor for my vote is that in all of the time this business has been down there, I've never fielded one complaint about parking from that business. Other ones in the area, yes, but never one from him, or from that business. So I'm assuming that there is a management about people not bringing their cars down too soon or being there as soon as they're done. I think that that has to be what's happening, and so I respect that, and so I will vote for this.
I just had a couple of questions that perhaps staff can help me out with. Speaking with the owner, I know at the rear of the property is a storage container, and I've been advised that will be removed. And if that's not replaced on the lot, that will free up space, or at least use up the space that they want to build the new bay in. And secondly, the tire storage, the used tire, old tire storage out the back is taking up a huge space. And once again, if there was a resolve around that, that would free up space for staff parking or other parking. I did walk by today and note how large that pile was. And I don't know if there's any requirements to have them move, storing things outside of buildings from a safety perspective, or if there's anything that we can do to move forward with this without having to give it a whole lot more thought.
Thank you for those questions, your worship. There are definitely storage requirements, and we can work with them, but this zone anticipates some outside storage because it's usually meant for these kind of uses that include outside storage. So we may not be able to clear it completely, but we can certainly, as we work with him on the development permit, continue to have conversations about that. And you're correct, where the CCAN is where the building would be placed.
Okay. There's no health or safety regards, Mr. Smith, regarding the tires or the length of time that they're there?
It falls within the jurisdiction of unsightliness. So if we would do and have received, not specific to this business, but we have received complaints regarding the storage of tires in the past. Through those complaints, we did have an application request to utilize a CCAN for the storage of the tires, but due to off-gassing, that was not permitted. But if council was in favor to further look at the unsightliness bylaw, good neighbor bylaw, I should say, that staff could come back with some recommendations if council was interested.
As it stands now, your worship, they're required to screen them. That is the main requirement in the bylaw.
Councilor Michi.
Yeah, thank you, your worship. I think your concerns, your worship, are noted, and I think that staff get the message that certainly is an opportunity for him to utilize the space that he has a little more efficiently and effectively, and that may free up a little bit more space. And so the fact that this business person is in good standing with the city and certainly isn't in contravention of any of our existing bylaws, I don't know if we need to impose anything on there, but I prefer for us to take more of the collaboration approach with him to see if there's any willingness for him to look at that as an option. So that would be my preference.
I agree with you, Councilor Michi, and that was not my intent. It was, I mean, perhaps pickups could be done on a more frequent basis as opposed to storing them for, I don't know how long he stores them for, just to reduce the size of the pile. And that would go a lot way myself personally, but I still do support this redevelopment as it stands. I'm just trying to improve the idea behind it.
Yeah, I guess from my position, I'm looking at it and I still see a potential issue with parking. I do feel that it could be resolved, but I'm not satisfied that will be resolved. I have great respect for the business owner. I think he conducts an excellent job of running that business efficiently and effectively with the parking there. And I have no disrespect to him or his planning. I'm looking to the future, how that building might be used, and I have concerns. And for those reasons, I won't approve their variance at this time.
Is there anything further? There is a motion on the floor. Did anybody want to make an amendment to the motion, or are we going to carry on with the sitting? Sounds like the move afoot is to carry on with the motion on the floor. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of allowing the development variance permit? And those opposed, please show Councillor Wayner opposed. Everybody else is approving the variance. This motion is passed.
Your worship, sorry to interrupt. Mr. Smith did get an update for you on the numbers you were looking for. And he said as of April 15th, it was at 95% of the normal.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yeah, that's actually good news because I believe that was sat lower previously. Hunter's Range was lower than Silver Star, so I got a little bit more snow to the north of us. And moving along, number 5.2. Correct? Yes, Janine, the annual tax rate bylaw 1925.
Thank you, your worship. So I'm putting on my regular hat and we are here to give the first three readings to the City of Armstrong annual tax rate bylaw number 1925. So every year, the community charter requires us to impose property taxes and establish tax rates for both municipal revenue and amounts collected from other governments. So we've adopted our budget, our financial plan, we received the revised assessment rule from BC Assessment, and we've also received all of the requisitions from all the other jurisdictions that we work for, or act for, and now we're prepared to make the tax rate bylaw. So in my report, I just have, if you just scroll down a smidge, there we go. I just would kind of walk through the process. So first, we always look at the property assessment. So I have the comparison of the general taxation assessments by class for the city. So in 2024, we see a 20 million increase in the residential and a 12 million increase in business, and an overall increase in all of the assessment categories for the city. On the next, we have the requisitions for other jurisdictions. So that's always an interesting fact, is that almost half of the property tax bill that we issue is not retained for the city. We collect it for these other jurisdictions, and then when we issue checks right back out for them. So we collect on behalf of 6 different organizations. The school, the regional district, the library, the CSRD for the hospital, the MFA is the Municipal Finance Authority, and BCAA is the BC Assessment Authority. So those, a couple of them changed from inflation. The school and library increased above inflation. So that did lead, that goes into the overall impact on our taxes. And then we go down to our taxes. So we have our 3 levies with the municipal levy, the RCMP levy, and the infrastructure levy. So in 2024, we're collecting roughly 3.8 million for city services. And we're saving for infrastructure. We're funding for RCMP. That includes roads, fire, parks and recreation, cemetery, bylaw, building and development, and many more. The last little bit is to look at the overall impact on levies. So council will note that the overall impact is less than what was presented during budget. This is just due to some updates and information in those calculations. And luckily, it's a positive update. So residential, the average assessment for 2024 is 589,000. That levy underneath this proposed bylaw, they'll be paying just over $2,500 in property taxes. It's about $10.77 a month. On the final page, we just look at the business. So the average assessment for an average business is $671,000. They'll be paying $8,269 for the year. It's just $75 for a month. And that increase is more than the residential, just because that class 6 saw a really large increase in their assessment this year. And that was targeted across BC. From BC Assessment, they increased, they focused on the class 6 assessments this year. So the tax rate bylaw is attached, and it is being presented for first, second, and third readings.
All right, do we have a mover? Councillor Weiner, seconder, Councillor Fowler, thank you. And questions?
I just have one, and it's just why the CSRD as opposed to the RDNO for the hospital?
Oh, well, probably Councillor Fowler can answer that. She actually sits on the hospital board, but the CSRD is the managing body for the hospital region, for the district that we pay into.
It's just,
It's the district. Yeah, we're,
Columbia Sioux show up for here, but it's RDNO for everything else?
yes,
Okay.
I know.
Sure.
It confuses me a lot too. And that's even with the school, right? The school district, our school district is the Salmon Arm School
Yeah.
District, not the Vernon School District.
Right.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
just depends where those borders are drawn.
Just on the hospital board, you saw the numbers and I think they were down a little bit, but there are some expenses and some buildings and some construction possibilities on the horizon. So smile this year.
Any further question? I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? And this will be passed unanimously. Thank you, Janine. 5.3, Community Services Extreme Heat Plan. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. So tonight we are presenting our extreme heat response plan. So this is a project that's actually been in place since last summer. We did receive funding through UBCM, and this was a joint project that we partnered with the Village of Lumbee, and we worked with In Emergent Solutions. And we're able to come back with a very extensive support mechanism for our community. We chose not to release it at the end of the summer when it was finalized, just based on the plan was in place. We knew it was there if we needed it, and we had the ability to respond. And we wanted to bring it in line with the preparedness work that we want to do this spring, coming into the season of when we typically see these types of events. So you were provided two different packages. So there is the Partners Program, Community Partners Package Playbook that was presented to you, as well as also as the Mayor and Council package. So outlined within the documents. I'll scroll down here. You can see the two of them there. It outlines the responsibilities in our overarching program, ultimately what the city's responsibilities are. But what we really recognized when we went through this process was it's not solely the city that's going to be working on this and responding. It's interior health. It's our local churches. It's our library, as I spoke to earlier, that we're going to partner with if we need to open up a cooling center. Or it's the curling rink if we need to larger scale cooling center, as we've opened up in the past. So community engagement was huge and will continue to be huge and will continue to be a focus, because these individual groups, whether a nonprofit or whether they are a for-profit business, support the community as a whole. And so it was important to ensure that they had a clear understanding of what the city's responsibilities are versus what we're hoping the city or what our community partners can come back and provide in return. Part of the program was to go through and look at who our vulnerable populations are. And really, that's really where we got a lot of our key information, was from our community partners. They know who these individuals are. They're seeing them on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. They have that communication with them already. So a lot of those initial contacts that we were hoping to make were already there and pre-existing. So we felt it was important, those conduits that are already instilled within our community will be key in forwarding messages through to our vulnerable populations, whether it's on preparedness or whether it's on response. So we'll continue to utilize those tools as they will prove to be effective in the long run for us. So it's important for council to recognize your role within any type of response, whether it's a heat event or whether it's flooding. You're the spokespersons for our community. So it's important that you guys understand what our EOC is doing in our response, what we're doing in preparedness, because people will be calling you, and we look upon you as the leaders within our community. So we want to ensure that the information that you have is accurate and that it's the most updated as possible. So your main point of conduit is going to be through our EOC director, who more than likely would be our CAO. So it would be the role of mayor and council to use that conduit with that individual to ensure that they're getting update information, which I think we've unfortunately had practice in the past with past events, that we try and get that information out to you in advance as quickly as possible before that messaging is going out to the community. We also want to make sure that messaging is consistent. As we know, we live in a very challenging communication place within our daily lives, where we struggle to keep up with information that's coming out via social media. And one of the other challenges that comes out of that is information that's incorrect. So we want to make sure that the city and our community knows as a whole that the information that you are providing is up to date and accurate. And so we will continue to utilize you as a very strong communication asset. And that's why we developed that individual playbook for you. So you have a clear understanding of your roles and responsibilities, how we will be responding, and ensuring that that information is standard, and ensuring that it falls in line with our other partners such as Interior Health. So what happens is that we rely on our working with our provincial partners with the HARS program. And that program really stands for a heat alert response system. So it has two different types of levels. Level 1 is a warning system that we have in place. And what it looks at is there a potential for 2 days of plus 35 Celsius degree daytime temperatures? That's going to potentially indicate that we're going into a warning stage, level 1. The other factor is if we don't have overnight cooling below 18 Celsius. So if we don't have that over 18 Celsius cooling and we have those daytime temperatures of plus 35, we're going to go into a warning stage, knowing that that's going to happen within a day, a week. And we'll start our messaging going out to the community through our EOC, but once again, through our community partners. Beyond that, then we go into that stage 2 where we're in the event, and that's when our response takes place. And there's very specific details in the response, and I'll open up our partners playbook for a good example, where it outlines the specific roles and practices that whether it is our library, whether it is going to be one of our other cooling centers, whether it's the chamber, or even some of our local businesses or our churches that actively want to play a role in supporting our community. So it could be us working with our partners to provide transportation for our vulnerable population, or to ensure that simply just messaging is getting out on where our cooling centers are and what support mechanisms are in place. Because as I said earlier, those conduits are already there. They already have those capabilities, whether they're managing a phone tree, whether they are sending out emails, or if they're going out and doing door knocking to specific clients that they work with. So it talks within each of the playbooks, it talks about our known vulnerable populations. We've done mapping on this. We also did mapping specifically to where our heat zones are. Because of the size of our community and because of our exposure, basically there's very small, intricate areas within our community, such as the intersection of Rosedale and Okanagan, and some sections of Highland Park, where we have heavily shaded areas that we know we're not going to see some of the heat issues that we would see, such as along Wood Avenue, where Highland Park School is. So we've recognized there's quite a bit of difference between our two elementary schools, and looking at what their needs specifically may be. So they're given a response checklist. So they will be prepared. They will have a clear understanding of the way that we will lead into this response, and how we will work through the response. And throughout that response, they have the ability to communicate directly with us if there's needs that they are identifying, or there's resources that they may be required that we could support them with. So there's specific things that I was going to call it Emergency Management BC, that they're not anymore. I'll just say the province will and will not support. So some of those identifiable things are outlined within there, so that once we have a signed agreement in place, it'll allow that information to flow more freely to those providers, as well as also give us further opportunities to get more in-depth resources from the province, such as for medical supplies. There's a postseason checklist. So we will actually be hosting on May, where did I have it down here? I want to make sure I got the date because we had to change it. May 23rd from 10 to 11 a.m. We're going to have it on Zoom, but also here within council chambers. So for any of our community partners that have signed up with this program, we've already been out in contact with all of them. We've sent out an email. We've done a little bit of door knocking. So there'll be an opportunity as our preseason starts to kick into gear, that we'll have that information session. And so far, we've got a very good response back from a lot of our partners to say that they'll be in attendance. And that'll be an opportunity to go through what our response will be, as well as also opportunities for them to work with our community and to support our community in a heat event.
Thanks, Warren. Warren, just in terms of activation of an EOC for the level 1 warning level and the level 2, we know that EOCs can certainly be straining on staff depending on how many people are involved in them. What do you foresee, like on a level 1 heat warning, you would have just like a level 1 EOC activation where it's basically yourself issuing the warnings and putting on communication, working with staff. If we got to the extreme level, I doubt that you would foresee a prolonged activation with multiple staff involved. It might be you and some administrative assistants or something like that. Just tell me what you kind of foresee should we ever get to level 1 and 2?
Yeah, so heat events are very unique in nature in the context of that we generally have a little bit of a lead up time knowing that it's going to happen. Environment Canada and all of the other players are very good at predicting temperatures. Precipitation, not so much. So we generally know up to a week out if there is potential for an event to happen. So that will give time, yes, for myself as the emergency program coordinator to start putting things in motion. Does it mean we're going to fully open up an EOC and bring in staffing? No, it doesn't. But what it does is allows us to register with the province so that in the event that there are additional works that are required, we can start getting those supports in place. Working on communication with our community, working with communication with our stakeholders to get them working with their vulnerable population to be prepared to the lead up to the event. And then during an actual event, we would be working with those partners once again and supporting them. It may mean bringing in some additional staffing, and that's part of our efforts right now to look and try and find individuals from our community. Could be former staff members, there are other emergency programs out there with staffing that can support us, as we've seen in other such as wildfire events, where other communities support other communities by bringing in support staff. So we're working on that networking and those opportunities to ensure that we have that full response in place. Heat events, because there is a substantial draw on health services, we recognize that, and that's where the assurance of having those cooling centers in place in advance is important to ensure that that is the first line of defense in ensuring that we are going to bring those numbers down. The past 2 events that we've seen, our first event back in June of 2021, we did open up a cooling center, and I believe we had 5 people attend over the 3 days that we were open. That people found other places to go, which is great to see, but we also recognize the importance of having it. And then with the event that took place in 2022, we had no one that required any support services that came out of that. And that was only on a level 1 support, warning support that we put in place.
Thanks, Warren. I think looking back a couple of years and the lack of people that were using the cooling center, I'm not so much sure it was that everybody had someplace else to go. I think it was about our ability to be able to get the word out to people somehow. And yes, it was on our Facebook page, but not everybody does Facebook. But now the new big email, maybe this is a really good time to try and push the people signing up for the email notifications, because most people will get more people will get email than go on Facebook to look for those notifications.
So
Just a
yes,
thought.
we will be able to use the Alertable app that also does have the ability to utilize landline communication. So a message can be sent out to an individual. We've already got some messaging that is being set up for the first week of May. That we're working with our communications staff to ensure that information's gone out. And we've done a little bit of work in promoting that program through Parks and Recreation and their guide for the last two sessions that are guides that they've put out. So we're finding that our numbers are climbing up for people that are signing up for that program. And we have had some inquiries from our vulnerable population to ensure that it is available by landline.
That's super. I forgot about that. Well, I didn't forget about it. I never thought about it. I forgot about it. So with the alertable, do you have the opportunity to do a test and they actually hear City of Armstrong voice or the reasoning behind that test so that they are aware of it? Like the Amber Alert comes on and they have some text with that as well?
We do test the system and we do that. We'll do that in the same first week of, I believe it's May 6th to 11th in there. That is Emergency Preparedness Week. And we will test it that week. We did last year. We try and have kind of contemplated using it for some other opportunities as a test project, but have chosen to try and use it on a limited basis to ensure that people don't become accustomed to it being just another message. We want to make sure that when we use it, that it's for its intended purpose.
I noticed that the thresholds weren't really all that high. I actually anticipated them to be higher to get to the level 1 and then to the level 2. So with those thresholds, I think we may see more of this in our community. I do really like the plan moving forward. A lot of thought, a lot of effort went into that. It's laid out very well and provides really clear instructions for everybody to follow from mayor, council, staff, and citizens. So well done. Thank you.
I totally agree with that. And, you know, thinking about like even a couple of years ago when all of a sudden we had like a heat dome and people just weren't prepared, didn't know. The thought that's gone into these programs now that have been funded for us to do should certainly be able to try and mitigate some of those problems. Although I do still see and hear people that think that the city isn't doing anything. So I hope that now that we've got this and now that we've got the YouTube program and the presentation that you just did, that's a really good response for us to be able to say, check out the YouTube, the council meeting for tonight's date, look online and you'll see. And because we really will have to rely on those partners. I know that city staff and are busy during an emergency doing other emergency things and people can't rely on our staff to be doing those jobs. So the partners are really important. So we just need to make sure that they all know that that's available to see. Call Warren if they want to participate, right?
Thank you, Warren. Moving along into bylaws, 6.1. That the City of Armstrong Council Code of Conduct Bylaw 1924/2024 be adopted. It has had 3 previous readings. Today is to move through for adoption. I have a mover. Councillor Todd, seconder. Councillor Drapla, thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And this will be passed unanimously. Thank you. Now that we've done that, we have to repeal policy number 300-20 Council Code of Conduct. The previous one, which was a bylaw as opposed to, oh, sorry, it's a bylaw as well. Anyways, we'll have to repeal that. Sure.
Good evening again, Council. We are repealing the Council Code of Conduct policy because it is now part of the bylaw that you just adopted. Unfortunately, I didn't remember that we needed to repeal it until this afternoon. That's why there is nothing in your agenda for it. But that is the reasoning.
Correct. Thank you, Councillor Nietzsche, seconded from Councillor Todd. I think the new bylaw has it well covered, and any other questions? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. And next, we're 6.3, the City of Armstrong Alternative Means of Public Notice Bylaw number 1919. Oh, sorry. Sure, thank you.
So 6.2 is that the City of Armstrong Development Procedures Amendment Bylaw number 1922 be adopted.
And that'll be moved by Councillor Wayner, seconded by Councillor Velstar. Thank you. Lori, did you want to speak to this at all? There's a lot of stuff coming in and out.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is primarily meant to make us in alignment with the new provincial housing regulations that prohibit us from having a public hearing when we are considering certain applications. And then we had some other more minor amendments that went along with it, related to kind of the land use contracts that are expiring, outdated wording, and just a couple little things that had come forward in between adoption of that bylaw. And since we're looking at it now, we brought them forward as well. But primarily it's about becoming in compliance with the new provincial changes before we bring the zoning bylaw forward.
Any questions for Lori? Thank you. Moved by I think we've already done that. Yeah. So if there are no further questions, then we will call the vote. All those in favor? And this will be carried unanimously. And back to where I once was already. The alternative means of public notice bylaw number 1919. The City of Armstrong alternative means public notice bylaw number 1919-2024 be adopted. May I have a mover? Councillor Drapula, seconded Councillor Todd. Is there any further questions to this? I know we hashed it out pretty good the other night. Councillor Todd.
I was noticing the other day that Township of Spall Machine uses the Your Country News to they put all their things in there. I was just wondering if we could use that as well. It doesn't have to be part of this, but as an alternate as well. Just a lot of people read that. It's around town. It sort of took over for the advertiser.
Thank you. I think we did have this discussion, and what we had to do was make a bylaw that said which two we were going to use, and additions can be added moving forward. But so this is in relation to this bylaw. These are the two mediums that we're going to use, and then we can move on from that. I'll let Philip address that a little more closely for me. Thank you.
Through your worship, yes, that is exactly correct. We needed to specify the two. Anything else and anything that we can think of, I am including in our communications strategic plan. So all these ones that we are coming up with during this meeting, I will add those in there as well.
Okay, great. Because I don't recall speaking about Your Country News the other day. So that's just.
I will write it down and add that one in. Thank you.
Councilor Wayner.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I feel comfortable looking at this, knowing that there's policy coming forward that'll incorporate other means outside of just technology and social media and the webpage. So with those aspects in mind, I'm comfortable moving this forward.
Any further questions or comments? I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? This too will be carried unanimously.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to, it's not in the agenda, but we had the Van Dies Trail cleanup this weekend, and it looks absolutely amazing. And the people that showed up to help out were energetic and full of fun. It was just a real feel-good, positive community initiative. So I thank Mayor Kramer and I thank Councillor Todd for coming out from the city. and Councillor Weiner and community members. We had hot dogs for everybody, and also we had the Sunbelt trailer was donated for the purpose. And I just challenge you to take a walk up there and find anything out of place. And if you do, pick it up. But thank you to the community. It's just great. No one was complaining about anything.
Okay, and at this time, we would like to move to an in-camera meeting. The council move to an in-camera meeting pursuant to the Community Charter, Section 90, subsection 1. A, personal information about identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or other position appointed by the municipality. Subsection G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. And subsection K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages that, in the view of council, could be reasonably expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. May I have a motion for adjournment? Councillor Todd, seconded Councillor Weiner. All those in favor? This meeting is adjourned.